What if I told you there's an animal that sees more daylight in a single year than any creature on Earth? An animal so small it weighs as much as your phone, but travels farther than any bird, fish, or mammal ever recorded. This is the story of the Arctic Tern, nature's most enduring athlete. It spends more of its life in the air than it does on land, eating, drinking, and even sleeping while flying. And the deeper you look into its journey, the stranger and more unbelievable it becomes. So, why does a bird this small decide to travel across the entire planet twice every year? How does it manage to outperform nearly every other creature in flight? And how on earth does it manage to sleep while flying? To answer that, we need to go back to where their journey begins, in a place where life itself feels impossible. Up here, temperatures plunge, storms can roll in with little warning, and a single failed hunting day can mean real trouble. As their name suggests, Arctic terns are typically found across the far north, nesting everywhere from Greenland to Iceland to northern Canada. Arctic terns, or Sterna paradisea, are terns in the family Laridae, the same family as gulls and noddies. They're medium-sized birds, about 30 to 40 centimeters in length, with a wingspan of just under a meter, so about the size of a rugby ball. They have very distinct features: a grey back and body, a blood-red beak, and a black crown like they're wearing a little cap. Like many skilled long-distance flyers, they have a long tapered tail and an unusually high wing-to-body ratio, a combination that makes them one of the most aerodynamically efficient birds on the planet. They can also live for a surprisingly long time, over 30 years in the wild, with the oldest ever recorded being 34 years old when it was recaptured, meaning it had likely completed more than 60 full migrations between the Arctic and Antarctica. But what makes the Arctic Tern truly special is its endurance and the incredible journey it takes on year after year. To understand just how remarkable this is, let's follow the journey of one group of Arctic terns nesting in Svalbard, a remote archipelago in the high Arctic. From here, they'll cross multiple oceans, span continents, and travel over 70,000 kilometers all the way to the icy coasts of Antarctica. Every year, around late August, as summer comes to an end on Svalbard, our terns begin preparing for their journey across the globe. They fuel up, rest, and get ready to escape the Arctic winter. With temperatures soon plunging to -10 or -15 degrees Celsius, staying behind is not an option. By September, something bizarre happens. The typically noisy colony falls into an eerie silence, a phenomenon known as dread. And then suddenly, they take flight. For many of the younger terns, only 3 or 4 months old, it's their first long journey. They stick close to their parents as the 1,000-strong colony head towards their first major stop in the North Atlantic, around South Greenland and the waters west of the United States. Here, in these food-rich waters, the terns gorge on small fish and plankton, building up energy for the long stretch that lies ahead as they make their way down toward Antarctica. Unlike many other migratory birds, they don't linger for long, only staying a few days before continuing across the vast stretch of the Atlantic Ocean. From this point on, it's full speed ahead, with the terns managing to cross distances up to 500 to 700 kilometers per day, a feat made possible because they can eat, drink, and even rest without ever touching the ground. They do this by swooping down to skim the surface, or by using a technique known as plunge diving, dropping from as high as 30 meters to grab fish near the surface. With each day, they push further south, feeding only during daylight hours when visibility is high, and continuing their travel through the night. By around day 35, they're nearing the equator, and soon they're faced with a new challenge. Up to this point, they relied on strong, predictable winds to preserve energy, but near the equator, these wind patterns suddenly weaken, leaving the air calm and unpredictable. With no reliable lift to ride, the journey across the equator becomes one of the toughest challenges they face. Thankfully, millions of years of evolution have prepared them for this exact moment. Their long, narrow wings and exceptionally high wing-to-body ratio make them incredibly aerodynamic. Even in calm conditions, they can glide far further than almost any bird their size should be able to. Once past the equator, winds begin to pick up again, and older terns guide younger ones, teaching them how to tap into the planet's natural air highways to conserve energy. By angling their wings and timing their flight just right, they can glide for hours without flapping, maintaining speed while minimizing effort. And this is the part that almost doesn't feel real. they can sleep while flying. When most birds simply land and rest, Arctic terns don't always have that luxury. The ocean beneath them can be thousands of kilometers of empty water, and they're not strong swimmers. So instead, they shut down one half of their brain at a time, a technique known as unihemispheric sleep, allowing them to rest, navigate, and stay airborne all at once. Think of it like flying on autopilot. It's a survival strategy so refined that allows them to remain in continuous flight for days or even weeks, touching land only when absolutely necessary. Once they clear the equator, the hardest part of the journey is behind them. As they push deeper into the South Atlantic, the young terns stay tightly grouped with the adults, following invisible routes passed down through generations. Before they continue full speed ahead to Antarctica, they make one final stopover along the coast of South America. Here, along the rich upwelling zones of Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina, places where seasonal winds pull cold, nutrient-rich water up from the deep, the ocean turns into a feeding ground again. Small fish and plankton crowd the surface, and the terns take full advantage, feeding heavily for several days to rebuild their energy reserves. But this stopover is brief, and soon the terns embark on their final stretch. Leaving the South American coast, the terns swing out into the open South Atlantic and merge into the powerful circumpolar wind systems that circle Antarctica. Instead of fighting these winds, they use them like conveyor belts, taking enormous sweeping arcs across the ocean. It can look very inefficient on a map, but it's precisely their mastery of global wind patterns that makes them the most successful long-distance migrants on Earth. Food becomes patchier the farther south they fly, but the terns adapt instinctively, hunting when conditions allow, then returning to long effortless glides for hours at a time. And then, after weeks of non-stop travel, a white glow appears on the horizon. Antarctica. Not the continent itself, terns rarely go that far inland, but the edge of the Antarctic pack ice. For the terns, this might as well be paradise. And this is the part that confused me the most. Why fly to the coldest place on Earth to escape winter? It turns out the terns aren't chasing warmth at all. Instead, they're chasing light. As visual hunters, more sunlight means longer feeding hours and clearer visibility. And in Antarctica's summer, the combination of 24-hour light, melting sea ice, and seasonal upwelling turns the surrounding ocean into some of the richest feeding waters on Earth. They'll remain here for the entire southern summer, feeding almost non-stop to rebuild the energy they burned on their journey south. But eventually, all good things must come to an end. And as the southern summer fades, the days begin to shorten, and the food that once crowded the surface sinks back into the deep. For the terns, this is the signal. The light they came here for is disappearing. So after weeks of near endless daylight and constant feeding, they lift off again, not to wander, but to begin the second half of their journey, the long flight home. Compared to the trip south, the journey home is much faster. By the time the terns leave Antarctica, the winds across the Atlantic have shifted, and now they're working in the terns' favour. With powerful tailwinds behind them, the birds follow a wide sweeping S-shaped route across the ocean. With minimal stopovers, they can cover thousands of kilometres in just a matter of days. They feed when the opportunity appears and rest in the air, and young terns follow the adults closely, memorising routes they'll use for the rest of their lives. And just as the Arctic summer begins, almost to the week, the terns arrive home. Back home, snow is melting, fish are plentiful, and the sunlight they chased halfway across the world returns once more. Back in the Arctic, the terns waste no time. They've travelled tens of thousands of kilometres for one singular purpose: breeding season. This is where one of the most repeated claims about Arctic terns appears, that they mate for life. And as romantic as that sounds, the truth is a little more nuanced. Many pairs return to the same colony year after year, and if they arrive at the same time, and if last year's breeding was successful, they'll often reunite. But if one arrives late, or if the conditions aren't right, they'll take on new partners. What doesn't change is their ritual, and it's a real sight to behold. First, courtship begins in the sky. The female chases the male upward in a spiraling high flight, testing his endurance. Then comes what's known as the fish flight, where the male swoops in with a small fish, offering it to her mid-call, proving that he can provide for future chicks. If she accepts, the two land together, strutting side by side with their wings lowered and tails raised. A quiet, almost tender display that says, "We choose each other." Together, they pick a spot on the rocky ground and scrape out a shallow nest. During this time, the male continues to feed the female, and mating occurs shortly after. Once the eggs are laid, everything becomes a team effort. Both parents incubate the eggs, both parents feed the chick, and both will defend their territory with shocking aggression, dive-bombing anything that wanders too close, from foxes to large gulls and even polar bears. For a creature their size, their dedication is extraordinary. The eggs hatch after about 3 weeks, tiny, fluffy chicks with oversized feet and a wobbly little walk. For the first days of their lives, they barely stray from the nest, relying entirely on their parents for warmth and food. But it doesn't stay that way for long. Within just a few weeks, the chicks begin taking their first real flights, learning to hover, dive, and land. They'll spend the next short while strengthening their wings, watching their parents hunt, and copying every move. And then, before they're even 3 months old, the unthinkable happens. Their first Arctic summer comes to an end, and they join the adults in their first migration. No practice run, no warm-up, just a 20,000 plus kilometer journey on their very first try. Their journey around the globe is not just a testament to their endurance, but also a reminder of how finely tuned they are to the planet's winds, its seasons, and its shifting light. When you tie this all together, the Arctic Tern might be the most extraordinary long-distance traveler on Earth. A tiny bird that outflies aircraft. A creature that sees more daylight than any other animal alive. And one that experiences not one, but 2 summers every year. All for the chance to return home, raise the next generation, and begin the journey all over again. If you ever hope to spot one in person, your best chance is during migration. That brief window when their route finally overlaps with places the rest of us can reach. Because the rest of the year, they're literally at the very edges of the world, following the sun.